Last time on The Ables, we met our main character, Philip. He's blind, and also he has a superpower, but he spends most of his time just relieved that his dad never intended to have the sex talk with him.
The Ables, Chapter 2. I'm going to try really hard not to be too repetitive and just keep pointing out that this book is incredibly telly and repetitive in itself. Let's go. Chapter 2, A New World. Well, we just had a new character thrown at us. I don't know if he's going to be a main character or he's just being mentioned for no reason. The main character is asking his dad a whole bunch of rapid-fire questions about superheroes, mostly like how many are there, how many of them are evil, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, what about Bobby Simpkins, who's apparently his friend from a camping trip and who is a normie, a muggle, if you will. Like, what, is Bobby an important character all of a sudden? He was never mentioned before, and all of a sudden there's apparently have been a camping trip where we made friends with Bobby. Alright, we also find out even more ways that our main character is super special. Apparently it's rare to inherit your parents' ability. Like, it seemed like it was only rare to inherit the ability if you were the one who does all. You know, you inherited the ability to steal other people's powers. But it seemed like previously that his dad was like, of course you have telekinesis because I have telekinesis. Now it's like it's really rare for a child to have the same powers as their parent, and so people think it's like an omen. Like, what? In addition to inheriting your father's ability, you also have some genetic markers that suggest something about your abilities is unique. I guess they just genetically test every kid, and there's probably a database somewhere, and that's not kind of creepy at all. Also, there's no mention of like his mother's powers or how often it happens that they inherit the powers of both parents. Maybe that's coming up. Yeah, this kid has unique DNA markers, whatever the fuck that means, but I guess he's special. Unless this whole DNA thing is gonna be important later in the story, I don't care. It's really boring, and the way it's presented is really boring, and there are lots of ellipses, and I just snore. So his mother shows up, and he's like, oh, cool, Mom's here somehow, even though I didn't hear her walk up. The kid never mentions hearing his mother walk up, and it would have been a cool detail if the kid had realized that he hadn't heard his mother walk up, but we can't be sure reading this book if it's just because the author was too lazy to give us any sensory details whatsoever. And then he's like, Mother, what's your superpower? And obviously it's like either flying or teleportation if she just like fucking showed up in this cornfield. And sure enough, it's teleportation. He says, my nose told me that this was definitely my bedroom. Don't say that. Give us what the smells are. Like, the smell of my sweaty clothes and Axe body spray assured me that this was my bedroom. Like, help me out here. So his mom teleports him to the ocean, and he talks about how much he loves the ocean without going into any sensory details. I never want to see anything in my life as badly as I wanted to see the ocean. So, and I think if he could see motion or light or that kind of thing, he'd at least be able to kind of see the ocean. So I think we are dealing with a kid who can't see anything. And we're going to go forward with that and wonder how he knows things like the little figurine in his dad's room has a blue and silver like cloak. So his mom has a job as a teleporter. Essentially, she's just a transporter from Star Trek. She teleports the superheroes from their superhero town to wherever they need to be. We've got a incredible situation. The main character's like, what's my little brother's superpower? And then we find out that he has super speed. Again, very similar to Dash in The Incredibles, the super speed kid is a rambunctious troublemaker. Kids aren't told that they're superheroes until they're old enough to manifest their powers. But they're raised in superhero towns. So these kids grow up surrounded by superheroes. Their parents are superheroes. And that somehow everyone keeps it a secret from these kids until they're old enough to manifest these powers. Custodians view the act of informing children of their abilities as a sacred right between parent and child. Like, why? I hate to keep using Harry Potter, but it's the quickest example to mind. Wizard parents with wizard kids don't not use magic around them until they're 12 or whatever. There are so many superheroes in this world. Why are any of them being kept a secret? Whole families of superheroes, whole cities of superheroes. Why are they being kept a secret from the Muggles? mom teleported away, it would have been nice of her to go with them to the car and teleport them and the car to the driveway, because we've established that she can teleport anything that she's touching. So, what a waste of gas. If there are superheroes who can fly, but they can't fly around town because some kid might see them, like, what's the point of having a superhero town? Nobody can use their powers in it because some kid might see. Don't kids wonder, like, say their mom and dad had a long day of fighting crime and they come back, like, all bloodied and beat up? Don't kids wonder why the heck that keeps happening? This world makes no sense.
Once again, things that could have been brought to my attention yesterday!
And his dad gives him, like, a little radio call beacon, which I feel like would be useful for all children to have, the ability to call their superpowered parents with a little beacon thing. I hope this is building to something. I really hope it is, because his device has a GPS chip inside, so if he gets in trouble, a teleporter, a person with teleportation powers, can zap right to him and get him and take him to safety. But are the GPS chips being used to track these kids whose DNA we all have on file? And just all of it seems really shady. Oh, we get an answer to my question. The kid finally asks why custodians. And I was starting to wonder if this book was maybe more tongue-in-cheek than I was giving it credit for. Like, if you do think of the author, you know, the CinemaSins guy, maybe he's writing a superhero book that's intentionally kind of stupid.
I'm just saying, think of what you could do with that kind of money.
I could get a trained shark.
Like, some of the world-building stuff I think he does mean to be serious, but I'm like, maybe he's making fun of superhero tropes by calling them custodians. Janitor is only one of the definitions of the word custodian, son, and one that only became the most common in the last few decades. Custodian can also mean caretaker. Back in the colonial times, there were custodians of properties, custodians of estates, of people even. It comes from the Latin word custo, or custo, which literally translated means guard or guardian. Okay, so now I'm pretty convinced that old Scott here, Jeremy Scott, was not being tongue-in-cheek with it. I think he thinks that this is clever. I think he looked up, he probably Googled words that mean guardian, and custodian was one of them. Jeremy Scott, is that what you did? This chapter is shorter than I thought it was going to be. We're on to chapter 3 where he goes to school, and that one was fairly short-ish. I guess it's about 10 pages. So maybe I'll try to power through it before I have to go build a horse fence. I'm almost building horse fence. This is the summer of building horse fence. This chapter, chapter 3, is called High School. I wonder what this is going to be about. Their high school is a giant dome, and he never thought to ask questions. Also, off-screen, his dad gave him another device that's cooler than the other one that he has. It's like a robotic earpiece voice, which is essentially like Jarvis or something. And it's like, why didn't his dad... Like, I know he didn't know he was a superhero before, but his dad had this device which can tell this kid where he is, what's around him, useful things that a blind kid could, you know, find helpful before he turned 12 and found out he was a superhero. Like, he could have used this in his old school, I bet. No, until you are 12, you must struggle. Of course, he's late to his first class, cliche, ding. So this school must have known that they were going to get a child who was blind. But apparently they decided that this navigation device was good enough. And so he's freaking out because he's missing his class, so he's miscounting how many steps he's taken, and he's getting lost. And, like, the school didn't think it would be good to have an adult, or heck, even another kid, on the blind kid's first day to show him around and help him get to his first class. Nah. He also doesn't apparently use a cane or any other kind of device besides this earpiece that his dad literally just gave him. So he's just running around these halls smashing into things because he has no way of knowing what's around him. The earpiece is not very helpful that way. Like, it doesn't stop him from smashing into the lockers. It's just like, turn around. Okay, sorry, I had to go pet a kitten because my sister works for the Humane Society and she brought home a kitten that we all knew when it was like almost dead. And now it's very much not almost dead and adorable, and I had to go pet it, you understand. Alright, back to these shenanigans. My aunt used a cane and then she used a guide dog, so like I'm used to them having something with which to navigate the world. Oh, now it warns him that there's something in his way. It's like, there's something in your way now! Like, where were you when he was running into a locker? His earpiece is too dumb to A, stop him from running into a locker, and B, realize that the obstruction in front of him was a person. In a very, very clunky way, we find out that this kid is in a wheelchair. And this kid has telepathy. And he was sitting outside the classroom because he doesn't like the idea of being in class, and I guess nobody decided to go check that 2 students are missing. Two superhero students missing. It seems like a problem. We find out this kid's name is Henry. I will probably forget because I'm bad with names. And this is the first time that his device tells him that he is at the special education classroom. And he realizes that he has been placed in the disabled class. And I'm like, why wouldn't your device tell you that that's the classroom you were headed for before you were right in front of it? And also this sentence, a blind kid, ... A kid in a wheelchair, ... The same classroom all day long, ... I had been placed in a class for disabled kids. Like, how many ellipses do you need? None in that sentence. You didn't need any, and it would have been fine. And he blames the fact that he's in the disabled class on his being a superhero? Why? That has, the two have nothing to do with each other.
Also, the navigation device, the failure navigation device that he uses in this chapter, barely ever gets mentioned again, and he doesn't really ever use it again. So it existed entirely for a scene of him being late to class, stumbling around the halls. That is the only reason this device existed, and I am very salty about that.
Here's something you should probably never write in your book. This is just a tidbit here. I couldn't believe that I was blank. After a character gets into a situation, this is a sentence that is like a momentum killer. It might seem like, ooh, it's a good way to get people excited, but it is not. It's clunky and overused and just doesn't need to be there. He's having like an argument with himself. He doesn't see blindness as a disability, which would be interesting to explore his own sort of, can you be ableist and still have a disability? His notion that other kids are like more disabled than him, or he's not truly disabled because maybe only people in wheelchairs are disabled in his mind. So like, that would be an interesting thing to explore. I seriously doubt that Jeremy Scott has the chops to explore it. You also have to watch out for contradictions. The teacher is showing us that she seems nice. She's very kind to him. He wasn't paying attention. She asked him a question twice and he didn't pay attention to her. And she's like very understanding, like, hey, I know you're distracted. It's the first day of school. We're just getting to know each other. But then he says she sounds cranky. But if you want to have her sound cranky, you gotta prove it. We find out there are only 8 kids in the class, so with 2 of them missing, the teacher didn't bother to at least, I don't know, open the door and look in the hall to see if 2 of them were just out there. She's a shape-shifting older lady. She is Professor McGonagall. There's no 2 ways about it. And now we get to go through and everybody has to introduce themselves and say their powers so we can get to know all the kids in this class who I will probably immediately forget. So clunky. I said all this matter-of-factly and without enthusiasm, which I guess is how I say most things. Oh, and he's a kid in a wheelchair who can read minds. Is everything in this book going to be like... I mean, this guy does make a living watching movies, so it's possible that everything is a slight reference to something, to a movie, to popular culture. And maybe it's even intentional. Like, maybe it's on purpose that this older lady teacher is a shapeshifter like McGonagall. Maybe it's on purpose that this boy who uses a wheelchair is also a mind reader, Professor X. I can't discount the possibility that that's intentional. I'm gonna hope that it is. There's a girl, Delilah Darlington, we've got the alliteration that we haven't seen from any of them, who sat directly in front of me. She had super hearing, but she was also deaf. How does that work? Would that possibly, I guess depending on what caused the deafness, would that just cause you to have, like, a average level of hearing? Like, I don't understand. She's in a superhero class, but her superpower doesn't work, presumably. The main character says it's sad, so I guess that means her superpower doesn't work. So, like, how does that work in this superhero world? If somebody's born with a power that they cannot use, they still go to the superhero school, I guess? Maybe they can learn to use it anyway? It's very confusing. Yeah, he says her power was 100% useless because of her disability. So would she not just go to, like, a muggle school? A school for the deaf instead of a superhero school where she has no discernible power? Oh, she gets an interpreter. Delilah gets her a whole ass other human, a whole interpreter with her. But the blind kid has to stumble around the hallway smashing into lockers until he finds his way. There's a girl who's allergic to sunlight who can control the weather, but that seems like it'd be pretty handy. You just always keep it cloudy around yourself. I mean, I guess it's so bad that even, like, if she kept it cloudy around herself, it wouldn't do that, and it's the irony. All these kids have to have something kind of ironic to their superpowers, so, like, she's a girl who can control the weather, but she can't go outside. Oh no, there's a kid with Down syndrome, and I'm very concerned that Jeremy Scott is not going to do a good job with this. I am not terribly familiar with Down syndrome myself. Multiple members of my family are on the autism spectrum, but I've not known anybody personally with Down syndrome, so I'm not going to be able to be certain if he is doing a good job with this character, but I high-key suspect he will not. I can tell you right now that people on the autism spectrum do not like it when you refer to them as being like, he's 20 years old but has the mind of a 5-year-old. That's kind of insulting, because it is a spectrum and it's not that easy to just say so-and-so has the mind of this age, because there's so many, like, differences and variables, and I suspect that it may also be an insensitive thing to say to somebody with Down syndrome. It is interesting that our main character is kind of judgmental. He admits that he's kind of afraid of Donnie, because Donnie is a physically imposing person, even if he is very sweet, you know, if you get to know him. And I do like that we are getting a main character who has some prejudices. It's nice to not have a main character who's, like, perfect, but so far all we've gotten from this character is that he has these prejudices, so it's kind of hard to like him right now. I'm hoping we find out that he has some redeeming characteristics soon. Because of Donnie's Down syndrome, his DNA is a little bit weird, which means that he might have one of two superpowers. They're not sure which. He either has super strength or the ability to fly, apparently, and they don't know which, so that'll be fun. Okay, we just found out that humans and custodians are not actually even the same species. Okay.
What? What the fuck?
So, can a person without powers be born to a custodian? Or is that impossible because custodians are a whole other, like, type of being? Well, we have another blind kid, James, who is a teleporter. And because he lost his sight, later in his life, he's able to still visualize the places that he could go. So apparently he was born in this town, so he can go anywhere in the town. And of course he lost his sight in a lab accident. Like, he can't lose his sight in a normal way. Which does beg the question, okay, say that our main character is somewhere that his mom has never been and he gets in trouble. And he signals, and she can't teleport to him because she's never been there. Presumably another teleporter who has been there would go get him, but, like, how does that work if, like, the only teleporter available has never been to the place where the superhero in trouble is at? Another kid, we're gonna meet all the kids, and this one has the power to grow in size to nearly 3 stories tall. It's exercise-induced asthma, and it's pretty bad, so even a brisk walk could have him gasping, but, like, that one's kind of pushing it as far as needing to be in the special class. Okay, I guess he's here because when he uses his superpower, he gets so winded that he can, like, not actually be useful with it. And there's a rich kid, and his name is Bentley. Apparently he's just, like, a genius. I guess he has high brain functionality. He's just super smart. And now our main character's, like, educating us about stuff. One of the oldest and longest serving members of the custodian governing body. You just found out you had superpowers. How do you know anything about the custodian governing body? This is another thing that is a skill that you gain the more you write, is remembering that when you're writing in a character's point of view, you cannot have information the character doesn't have, especially when you're writing in first person. If you make the choice to write in first person, you're making the choice to only have the information the character has. And if the character is suddenly an expert on something that they didn't know anything about a few days before, then people are going to notice and be weirded out. I don't know how I'm going to remember any of these kids or their powers. Like, I'm hoping that only a few of them, because there's only 3 kids on the cover, so I'm hoping that only a few of them actually become friends with our main character. Here's an interesting tidbit that the author actually got right. The rich kid, his disability makes him have a poor sense of balance. He stumbles and falls frequently. And the main character's like, yeah, I am kind of clumsy and I fall a lot too. And actually that's a fairly common experience with blind people. You do use your eyes more than you realize to help you balance and orient yourself. And so some, not all, blind people can struggle with balance. Weird that Jeremy Scott would know that. So judgy though. He's like, I want to be friends with everyone except Donnie, who didn't sound like an active participant in a friendship anyway. How the fuck do you know you haven't done anything except judge him? Donnie is the one who has Down syndrome. He's like, I wanted friends. I wasn't picky. Well, you're being pretty picky. And then for the rest of the morning, they all just do regular classwork. So I don't know when they get to do the other stuff, the superhero stuff, but they found out about each other and their powers. And I'm going to stop there. Gosh, this is a frustrating book. I hope it's entertaining for you guys. I know sometimes these things start out slowly and we don't make as many jokes or have as much fun at the beginning, but I'm hopeful that we will get to the point where we can get our footing a little bit with the story, figure out what the actual plot is, because we have not gotten the plot yet, and go from there, and hopefully we'll start having some more fun with it. But thank you for sticking with me as we read the Ables, everyone, and hopefully at least we're learning. I'll see you with the next chapter, whenever that is. Thank you everyone for watching that video. You guys rock, but you know who rocks even more? That's right, my patrons, being Callison, Lennox, Ray, Artemis, Shelby, Zaire, Adrienne, Jesper, Ryakio, Irene, Sabby Panda, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, and Lisa. Have you ever heard of a better batch of patrons in your entire life? I bet you haven't. My patrons are the best, and you can fight me. If I go crazy, then will you still call me Superman? If I'm alive and well, will you be there holding my hand? I keep you by my side with my superhuman might. Kryptonite.